Have you ever had someone you love stab you in the back so deep that you could practically feel the blade scraping against your ribs? If you have, then you'll understand exactly why I did what I did. If you haven't, well, stick around, because this story is going to take you on a ride that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. You know what they say about revenge being a dish best served cold? I used to think that was just something people said in movies. Turns out, when you're methodically dismantling someone's dream wedding piece by piece, cold revenge tastes absolutely delicious. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, back when I still believed my brother Marcus was capable of basic human decency. Growing up, Marcus was always the favorite. Not in the subtle way where parents pretend they don't have preferences. No, this was full-blown golden child syndrome. When Marcus got a C in calculus, Dad would pat his shoulder and say, "Math's tough, son. You'll get it next time." When I got a B+ in the same class 2 years later, Mom would purse her lips and ask why I couldn't apply myself better. Marcus played varsity soccer and got a participation trophy mindset from our parents. I played varsity volleyball, made team captain, and got a lecture about staying humble. The pattern followed us into adulthood. Marcus dropped out of college twice, bounced between dead-end jobs, and moved back in with our parents at 26. Each time, they welcomed him with open arms and made excuses about him finding his path. Meanwhile, I graduated summa cum laude, landed a 6-figure job in marketing, bought my own condo, and somehow I was still the disappointment because I worked too much and didn't visit enough. So when Marcus called me last spring, voice trembling with excitement, announcing that he'd proposed to his girlfriend Sarah and they were planning their dream wedding, I should have known better. I should have recognized the setup from a mile away. But despite everything, despite years of watching him get away with murder while I scrambled for scraps of approval, I still loved my little brother. And like an absolute fool, I wanted to help. "The thing is, Jess," he said, and I could practically hear him running his fingers through his hair the way he always did when he was nervous. "Sarah's been dreaming of this perfect wedding since she was little. You know how girls are with that stuff." I bit back my first response, which would have involved several colorful words about his casual sexism. "We found this amazing venue," he continued. "The Rosewood Estate? It's like something out of a fairy tale. Stone walls, gardens, the whole 9 yards. But..." His voice trailed off. "But?" I prompted, though I already knew where this conversation was heading. "It's expensive. Really expensive. The venue alone is $15,000, and that's before catering, flowers, photography, the dress, the band." He let out a shaky laugh. "We're looking at close to 40 grand for everything we want." I stared out my apartment window, watching the city lights twinkle below. $40,000. That was more than some people made in a year, but I had it. I'd been saving aggressively since college, living below my means, investing wisely. I had enough in my savings to cover their entire wedding without touching my emergency fund or retirement accounts. "I know it's a lot to ask," Marcus rushed on, "but you're doing so well with your career, and Sarah and I are just getting started. We're still paying off her student loans, and you know I'm finally getting my life together with this new job at the insurance company. We'll pay you back, I promise. Every penny." "It might take a while, but..." "Marcus," I interrupted softly. "Yeah?" I closed my eyes, feeling that familiar tug in my chest. The same feeling that had made me help him with his rent when he was unemployed. The same feeling that had made me co-sign his car loan when his credit was shot. The same feeling that had made me cover his half of Mom's birthday dinner when he'd forgotten his wallet. "You don't have to pay me back," I said. "Consider it my wedding gift to you and Sarah." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Jess?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. I'll transfer the money tomorrow. Send me the details for all the vendors." What followed was 5 minutes of Marcus crying, thanking me, calling me the best sister in the world, promising he'd never forget this. Sarah got on the phone and sobbed her gratitude. They painted pictures of me dancing at their reception, of how beautiful everything would be, of how this was going to be the start of something wonderful for all of us. I believed every word. God, I was such an idiot. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. The way Marcus's voice had that calculated tremor, like he'd practiced the conversation. The way Sarah's tears seemed to turn on and off like a faucet. The way neither of them asked if I could actually afford it, or if this would put me in financial strain. But in that moment, sitting in my quiet apartment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Like I was finally the good sister. The generous one. The one who came through when it mattered. I had no idea I was funding my own humiliation. The money transfer went through on a Tuesday morning. $42,375. I watched my savings account balance drop and felt a strange mix of anxiety and pride. This was it. I was officially funding Marcus and Sarah's dream wedding. Within hours, my phone was buzzing with updates. Photos of flower arrangements, screenshots of menu options, links to photographers, portfolios. Sarah had apparently been maintaining a secret Pinterest board called Future Mrs. Coleman Wedding for 3 years, and now she was unleashing all that pent-up planning energy. "Jess, you have to see this cake design," she gushed during our first planning call. "It's 4 tiers with cascading sugar flowers and gold leaf accents. The baker says it'll feed 200 people easily." 200 people. I made a mental note. That was a lot bigger than I'd imagined. "Wow, that's quite a guest list you're putting together." "Oh, you know how it is," Sarah laughed. "Once you start writing names down, it just keeps growing. Marcus's college friends, my sorority sisters, all the family, coworkers. We're thinking of renting shuttle buses to bring people from the hotel to the venue." I found myself getting caught up in her excitement despite myself. There was something infectious about wedding planning, even when it wasn't your own wedding. Over the next few weeks, I became an unofficial consultant. Sarah would call me during my lunch breaks to debate between ivory and champagne table linens. Marcus would text me photos of suit options at midnight. They'd added me to a group chat called Coleman Wedding Squad, where they shared every tiny decision and milestone. String quartet or DJ for the ceremony? Sarah messaged the group one evening. "String quartet," I typed back. "More elegant for an outdoor ceremony." "Ooh, yes. Jess, you have such good taste. I'm so glad you're helping us with this." For the first time in years, I felt like I was part of something, like my opinions mattered, like I was the sister Sarah had never had, and Marcus was finally appreciating having me in his life. I should have known it was too good to be true. The first red flag came 6 weeks into the planning. I'd offered to drive to the venue with them to do a final walkthrough, assuming I'd want to see where my money was going. Sarah's response was oddly evasive. "Oh, that's so sweet of you to offer, but you're so busy with work. We don't want to impose on your weekend. Marcus and I can handle it." "It's not an imposition," I insisted. "I'd love to see the place. The thing is," Marcus jumped in, "we're meeting with the wedding planner super early, and then we have appointments with the florist and the band right after. It's going to be a really long, boring day, mostly just us staring at centerpieces and arguing about chair covers." Something in his tone felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on what. "Are you sure? I promise I won't get in the way of any decisions. I just want to see where the magic's going to happen." Sarah and Marcus exchanged a look I pretended not to notice. "Maybe next time," Sarah said quickly. "When we go for the tasting, you'll definitely want to be there for that." The tasting never happened. Or rather, it happened without me. I found out about it 3 days later, when Sarah posted Instagram photos of herself and Marcus, sampling what looked like an incredible spread of appetizers, entrees, and desserts. The caption read, "Tasting day with my future hubby. Every bite was perfection. Can't wait for our guests to experience this." When I called to ask about it, Sarah sounded genuinely surprised. "Oh my gosh, I totally forgot to invite you. We had to reschedule at the last minute because the chef had a family emergency, and it was the only time he could fit us in. I'm so sorry." It was a reasonable excuse. These things happen. But combined with being excluded from the venue visit, a pattern was starting to emerge. The second red flag was bigger and harder to ignore. I was scrolling through Facebook one evening when I saw a post from Marcus's best friend Dave. It was a photo of him holding up a navy blue tie with the caption, "Honored to be standing next to my boy Marcus on the big day. Groomsmen suit shopping equals mission accomplished." Groomsmen shopping. I stared at the photo for a long moment, counting the guys tagged in the comments. Dave, obviously. Marcus's college roommate Tyler. His cousin Brett. 2 guys from his soccer league. His childhood friend Alex. 6 groomsmen. Which meant Sarah probably had 6 bridesmaids to match. So where exactly did that leave me? I tried calling Marcus, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried Sarah with the same result. Finally, I sent a text to the group chat. "Hey! Saw Dave's post about groomsmen shopping. Sarah, want to go bridesmaid dress shopping soon? I'd love to help you pick out styles." The response took 3 hours to come, and when it did, it was just from Sarah. "Still figuring out the wedding party details. We'll keep you posted. 2 hearts." Still figuring out? The wedding was 4 months away. How are they still figuring out their wedding party? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every conversation, every evasive answer, every time they'd made plans without including me. I told myself I was being paranoid. I was funding their wedding. Of course I'd be in it. Of course I'd have a role. I was Marcus's sister, for crying out loud. But deep down, a cold certainty was starting to settle in my stomach. I pulled up Sarah's Instagram and started scrolling backward through her posts. Wedding venue tour, just her and Marcus. Engagement party I'd apparently missed, surrounded by friends I didn't recognize. Bridal shower planning with her sorority sisters. Bachelorette party discussions in the comments of every photo. Not once did I see my name mentioned. Not once did I see myself in any of the photos or tagged in any of the posts. I was funding a wedding I wasn't invited to be part of. The realization hit me like a freight train. But even then, I gave them the benefit of the doubt. There had to be an explanation. Maybe they were planning to surprise me. Maybe Sarah was overwhelmed and hadn't gotten around to asking me officially. Maybe they assumed I was too busy with work to be in the wedding party. I decided to give them one more chance to include me. One more opportunity to prove that I wasn't just their personal ATM. I had no idea how spectacularly they were about to fail that test. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in March, exactly 10 weeks before the wedding. I'd spent the entire day in back-to-back client meetings, and I was exhausted. All I wanted was to order takeout, pour a glass of wine, and maybe catch up on some Netflix. Instead, I found myself driving across town to Mom and Dad's house for what had been billed as a family dinner. I should have known something was up when I arrived to find Sarah's car in the driveway alongside Marcus's beat-up Honda. This wasn't going to be casual anything. "Jessica," Mom practically sang as I walked through the front door. Perfect timing. We were just talking about the wedding. I found them all gathered in the living room, Mom, Dad, Marcus, and Sarah, with what looked like wedding planning materials spread across the coffee table. Save the date cards, seating charts, and a thick binder that I recognized as Sarah's master wedding planning folder. Jess! Sarah jumped up and gave me an overly enthusiastic hug. I'm so glad you're here. We have something exciting to show you. She grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the coffee table, where she'd laid out what appeared to be a hand-drawn seating chart. Look, we finally finished the table arrangements. It was like solving a puzzle. Who sits with whom? Keeping the divorced relatives separated. Making sure the kids' table isn't too close to the band. I leaned over to study the chart, automatically looking for my name. Table 1 was clearly the head table. Marcus, Sarah, and the wedding party. Tables 2 and 3 seemed to be immediate family and close friends. Table 4 was extended family. Tables 5 through 8 were a mix of college friends, co-workers, and what looked like Sarah's sorority network. I scanned every table twice, then a third time. My name wasn't anywhere. This looks great, I said carefully, my voice sounding strangely calm to my own ears. Where am I sitting? The room went dead silent. Sarah's smile faltered. Marcus suddenly became very interested in his shoes. Mom and Dad exchanged one of their patented meaningful looks. Well, Sarah said slowly, that's actually what we wanted to talk to you about. My heart started pounding, but I kept my expression neutral. Oh? Marcus cleared his throat. The thing is, Jess, we've been talking, and we've decided to keep the wedding really small and intimate. Just immediate family, and our closest friends. I blinked at him. I am immediate family. I'm your sister. Of course you are, he said quickly, but you know how it is with wedding budgets. Even with your generous gift, we still have to be really careful about numbers. The venue has a strict capacity, and… I paid for the venue, I interrupted, my voice still eerily calm. I paid for all of it. The entire wedding. Sarah jumped in, her voice taking on that sickeningly sweet tone she used when she was trying to manipulate someone. And we are so grateful for that. You've been incredibly generous. But we just want the day to be really personal and meaningful, you know? Small and intimate. How small? I asked. About 120 people, Marcus mumbled. I stared at him. 120 people is small and intimate? Well, when you factor in Sarah's extended family, and all our college friends, and the people from work we had to invite. Sarah's voice trailed off as she seemed to realize how ridiculous she sounded. That's when it hit me. The real reason I wasn't invited wasn't about numbers or intimacy or venue capacity. I could see it in the way they were all looking at me, like I was a problem to be managed, an embarrassment to be hidden away. I wasn't their idea of the right kind of guest. Let me get this straight, I said, standing up slowly. I'm funding your entire $40,000 wedding, but I don't make the cut for your guest list because it's too small, even though you're inviting 120 people, even though I'm your sister. Jess, please don't be dramatic, Mom said, using the same dismissive tone she'd been perfecting for 30 years. Marcus and Sarah have the right to plan their wedding however they want. You're being very generous with your gift, but that doesn't mean you get to dictate their choices. I'm not trying to dictate anything, I said. I just assumed that when I agreed to pay for my brother's wedding, I'd actually be invited to attend it. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his armchair. Maybe you could have a nice dinner together after they get back from their honeymoon. A private celebration, just family. The audacity was breathtaking. They wanted me to fund the party and then celebrate in private afterward, like some kind of consolation prize. Is this because I don't fit your aesthetic? I asked Sarah directly. Too corporate? Too boring? Not photogenic enough for your Instagram posts? That's not… Sarah started, but Marcus cut her off. Look, Jess, it's not personal. We just want our wedding day to be perfect, and having family there can sometimes be complicated. You know how you get at events. You overthink everything. You worry about details. You're always working, even when you're supposed to be relaxing. We just want one day where we can focus on each other without any stress. The room fell silent again. I could hear the clock ticking on the mantel, could hear Dad's breathing, could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. How I get at events. Like I was some kind of problem guest. Like I was the family member everyone tolerated but didn't actually want around. So to summarize, I said, my voice still unnaturally calm. You want me to pay $42,000 for a wedding I'm not invited to, because my presence would be stressful. When you put it like that, Sarah began. How else would I put it? I interrupted. That's literally what you just told me. Marcus rubbed his temples. Can't you just be happy for us? This is supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, and you're making it all about you. All about me. I was making their wedding that I was paying for all about me. That's when something inside me snapped. Not the explosive, dramatic kind of snapping you see in movies. It was quieter than that. Colder. Like a switch being flipped, turning off every generous impulse I'd ever had toward my brother. You're absolutely right, I said, and my voice sounded strange even to myself. This is your day, your choice, your wedding. The relief on their faces was palpable. I'm so glad you understand, Sarah gushed. We knew you'd be mature about this. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said, gathering my purse and keys. I understand that you think I'm good enough to fund your fairy tale, but not good enough to witness it. I understand that you've been lying to me for months, pretending to include me in planning while secretly hoping I'd never ask about my actual role. I understand exactly what kind of people you are. I headed toward the door, but Marcus's voice stopped me. Jess, wait. You're not going to do anything crazy, are you? I mean, we really appreciate everything you've done, and we'd hate for this to ruin our relationship. I turned back to look at him, this brother I'd spent my whole life trying to please, trying to help, trying to love despite his selfishness. Crazy? Why would I do anything crazy? The relief on his face was almost comical. Right, good. Because the deposits are all non-refundable anyway, and… Marcus? Yeah? I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. The deposits might be non-refundable, but the final payments haven't been made yet, and guess whose credit card all the vendors have on file? The color drained from his face. Sweet dreams, I said, and walked out the door. It was time to show them exactly how crazy I could be. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, a cup of coffee growing cold beside me, and a yellow legal pad covered in notes. By sunrise, I had a complete inventory of every wedding vendor, every contract detail, and every payment schedule. More importantly, I had a plan. The beautiful thing about being the person who paid for everything was that I was the person on all the contracts. My name, my credit card, my phone number, listed as the primary contact. Marcus and Sarah had been so eager to let me handle the boring financial stuff that they'd essentially handed me complete control over their wedding without realizing it. I started with reconnaissance. Over the next few days, I called each vendor under the pretense of confirming details. The conversations were enlightening. Hi, this is Jessica Coleman, I said to the florist. I'm calling about the arrangements for the Coleman-Mitchell wedding on May 15th. Oh yes, the cascading orchid arrangements for the ceremony arch, plus the 12 centerpieces with peonies and roses. Such a beautiful order. Is everything still on schedule? Actually, I wanted to double-check the payment timeline. When is the final balance due? Let me see. Looks like we need the final payment 2 weeks before the event. So that would be May 1st. Will that work for you? Perfect. That should be fine. And just to confirm, if we needed to make changes to the order, what's the deadline for that? For major changes, we'd need at least 3 weeks' notice. Minor adjustments can be made up to 1 week before. I made careful notes. 3 weeks meant I had until April 24th to make major changes to the floral arrangements, or to cancel them entirely. The catering company had similar policies. The band required final payment 10 days before the event. The photographer needed 2 weeks. The venue required the final balance 30 days in advance, which had already been paid. But they were surprisingly flexible about quote, adjustments to the service package. By Friday afternoon, I had a complete timeline mapped out. I also had something else, a growing sense of power that I'd never experienced before. For the first time in my life, I held all the cards in a situation involving Marcus. But I wasn't ready to play them yet. First, I wanted to give them one last chance to do the right thing. Call it my final test of whether there was any decency left in my brother. I crafted a carefully worded text message to the group chat. Hey, I've been thinking about our conversation the other day. I know you want to keep things small and intimate, which I totally understand. But I was wondering if maybe there's a way I could still be part of the day. I'd be happy to help coordinate vendors, or maybe I could do a reading during the ceremony. I just want to support you both however I can. The response came back in less than an hour from Sarah. That's so sweet of you to offer, but we actually have everything covered. Marcus's cousin is doing a reading, and we hired a wedding planner to coordinate everything on the day. But thank you for thinking of us. They hired a wedding planner with my money to coordinate the wedding I wasn't invited to. I stared at my phone for a long moment, then deleted the group chat entirely. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in months. I treated myself. Spa day, expensive dinner, shopping for a new dress I didn't need. I needed to clear my head and prepare for what was coming next. Because after that text exchange, I was done giving them chances. Monday morning, I started making calls. Hi, this is Jessica Coleman calling about the Coleman-Mitchell wedding on May 15th. I need to discuss some changes to our floral order. Of course. What kind of changes are you thinking? Actually, I need to cancel the entire order. There's been a change of plans. There was a pause. I see. Well, since we're more than 3 weeks out, we can cancel without penalty, though your deposit will be forfunded. Can I ask what happened? If it's a budget concern, we might be able to work with you on a scaled-down version. No, it's not budget. The event is no longer happening. Please process the cancellation and send me confirmation in writing. Oh my, I'm so sorry to hear that. Of course, I'll take care of that right away. One down. The caterer was next. I need to cancel our catering order for May 15th. Cancel? But that's such a large order, and we've already started prep work for some of the specialty items. I understand there may be fees involved. Please send me the final invoice for any cancellation charges and remove us from your schedule. Well, if you're sure, this is quite unusual this close to the event. Can I ask? It's personal. Thank you for your time. 2 down. The photographer was confused but professional. The band was disappointed but understanding. The string quartet for the ceremony seemed genuinely sad about losing the gig. I felt a tiny pang of guilt about that one. They were just musicians trying to make a living. But then I remembered Sarah's voice saying we hired a wedding planner, and the guilt evaporated. By Tuesday afternoon, I had systematically canceled every vendor except the venue itself. That one required a different approach. I called the Rosewood Estate and asked to speak with their events coordinator. Hi, Mrs. Patterson. This is Jessica Coleman. I'm calling about the Coleman-Mitchell wedding on May 15th. Oh yes, such a lovely venue choice. How can I help you? I need to discuss the catering arrangements. I know we had planned to use our own caterer, but they just canceled on us. Do you have in-house catering available? I'm so sorry to hear about your caterer. Unfortunately, we're booked solid for outside catering that weekend. But let me check. Yes, we do have our in-house option available. It's quite a bit more expensive than what most couples budget for, but it's top quality. How much more expensive? Well, for your guest count of 120, our premium package would be about $18,000. That includes appetizers, 3-course plated dinner, open bar, and wedding cake. $18,000 they didn't have. I smiled. That sounds perfect. Can you hold that date for me? I'll need to confirm with the couple, but I want to make sure we don't lose the option. Of course. I'll put a hold on it until Friday. Will that give you enough time? That should be perfect. I hung up the phone feeling deeply satisfied. Marcus and Sarah would show up to their wedding venue expecting the food I'd paid for, only to discover they needed to come up with $18,000 on the spot if they wanted their guests to eat anything more substantial than the mince on the tables. But I wasn't done yet. The best part of my plan was still to come. Wednesday morning, I composed an email to the wedding planner Sarah had mentioned. It took me an hour to find her contact information through Sarah's Instagram posts, but eventually I tracked down Bella Martinez from Blissful Beginnings Wedding Planning. Dear Bella, I wrote, I'm the sister of the groom for the Coleman Mitchell wedding on May 15th. I was wondering if we could set up a call to discuss some last-minute changes to the vendor arrangements. There have been some unexpected developments, and I want to make sure everything goes smoothly for Marcus and Sarah's big day. Her response came back within 2 hours, along with her phone number and availability. Perfect. It was time for phase 2 of my plan. By the end of the week, Marcus and Sarah would discover exactly what happened when you bite the hand that feeds you. And I was going to enjoy every single minute of watching them scramble. The first crack in their perfect wedding facade appeared on Thursday afternoon. I was in a client meeting when my phone buzzed with a call from Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. Then Sarah called. Then Marcus again. By the time I checked my messages an hour later, I had 7 missed calls and a string of increasingly frantic texts. Marcus, Jess, call me ASAP. There's an issue with the florist. Sarah, something weird is happening with our vendors. Can you call me? Marcus, the florist says our order was canceled? This has to be a mistake. Sarah, our photographer just called and said the same thing. What's going on? Marcus, Jess, call me now. I took my time responding. I finished my meeting, grabbed a coffee from the lobby cafe, and settled into my office before finally calling Marcus back. Thank God, he answered on the first ring. Jess, something crazy is happening. All our vendors are saying their contracts were canceled. But that's impossible, right? I mean, you didn't. Didn't what? I asked innocently. Cancel everything. You wouldn't cancel everything, right? I let the silence stretch just long enough to make him sweat. Why would you think I canceled anything? Because your name is on all the contracts. The florist said someone called claiming to be you and canceled our entire order. But that's impossible, because you wouldn't do that to us. The desperation in his voice was almost amusing. You're right, Marcus, I wouldn't do that to family. Good thing I'm not considered family anymore, remember? Another silence, longer this time. Jess, what did you do? I made some adjustments to my wedding gift. Since you made it clear that my presence isn't wanted, I figured my money probably isn't wanted either. You can't be serious? You canceled everything? Not everything, I said cheerfully. The venue is still booked. You'll have a beautiful empty room with absolutely nothing in it. Very minimalist. Very Instagram-worthy. I could hear Sarah in the background, her voice shrill with panic. What is she saying? What did she do? Sarah wants to know what I did. Marcus relayed unnecessarily. Jess, please. We can work this out. You can what? Unexclude me from your wedding? Include me in the family I've been supporting for years? Actually appreciate me instead of treating me like an ATM with legs? If this is about not being invited, it's not about not being invited, Marcus. It's about you and Sarah thinking you could use me and then discard me when I stopped being convenient. It's about you taking $42,000 from me and then telling me I'm too stressful to be around on your special day. I heard Sarah grab the phone. Jessica, please. We're sorry, okay? We handled things badly. But the wedding is in 3 weeks. Our families are flying in. We've sent invitations. People have bought gifts. That sounds like a lot of stress, I interrupted. Good thing I won't be there to make it worse. What do you want? She asked, and for the first time since this whole thing started, someone was asking the right question. I want you to understand what it feels like to plan something important and then have it ripped away from you at the last minute. But we can fix this. Sarah's voice was getting higher, more desperate. We'll invite you. You can be in the wedding party. We'll make you the maid of honor if you want. I almost laughed. Now you want me to be maid of honor? How generous. Let me guess. I'd also get to pay for my own dress and throw you a bachelorette party. No, we'd cover everything. Please, Jessica, just tell us what you want us to do. What I wanted was for this conversation to have happened 3 months ago. What I wanted was for them to have included me from the beginning, to have valued me as more than just a source of funding. What I wanted was a brother who actually gave a damn about me. Instead, I said, I want you to figure out how to throw a wedding without my money, just like you figured out how to plan one without me. But the deposits, we'll lose all the deposits. Sarah was crying now. You should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't good enough to witness your happiness. Marcus took the phone back. Jess, please, I'm begging you. I know we screwed up, but don't punish Sarah for my mistakes. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply withdrawing my financial support for an event I'm not invited to. Seems perfectly reasonable to me. The venue alone was $15,000, and worth every penny to learn what kind of people you really are. I could hear Sarah sobbing in the background, and despite everything, I felt a tiny twinge of sympathy. But then I remembered her sweet, fake voice telling me the wedding needed to be small and intimate, while planning to invite 120 people. Look, Marcus said, his voice breaking slightly. Maybe we can postpone. Give us time to save up some money, rebook everything. That's between you and your vendors. I'm sure they'll be very understanding about the situation. What about Mom and Dad? They're going to be furious when they find out what you did. What I did? I funded a wedding for 2 people who then told me I wasn't welcome at it. If Mom and Dad have a problem with my response to that, they're welcome to contribute their own $40,000 to your cause. The call went quiet except for Sarah's crying. Is there anything, Marcus asked finally, anything at all that would make you change your mind? I considered this. Was there? Could they say or do anything at this point that would make me want to restore their wedding? You know what would have changed my mind? I said. If you had called me 3 months ago and said, Jess, we're so grateful for your generosity, and we want you to be part of our special day. Will you be my maid of honor? Instead, you took my money and then told me I was too much trouble to have around. We can still do that. We are doing that. 3 months too late. Actions have consequences, Marcus. You taught me that, actually. Every time I had to bail you out of a situation you'd created, you'd promise to do better next time. Well, congratulations. You finally taught me to stop believing in next times. Before he could respond, I hung up. My phone immediately started ringing again. I turned it off. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. I had one more call to make, and this one was going to be the most satisfying of all. Bella Martinez, Blissful Beginnings Wedding Planning. Hi, Bella. This is Jessica Coleman. We spoke about the Coleman-Mitchell wedding. Oh, yes. I was actually just about to call you. I've been getting some very strange calls from vendors today. That's actually what I wanted to discuss. There's been a change in circumstances. The person who was funding the wedding, me, will no longer be covering the costs. I wanted to give you a heads up so you could adjust your planning accordingly. There was a long pause. See? Does the couple know about this development? They're finding out as we speak. I thought you should know that they'll need to either come up with about $30,000 in the next 3 weeks or start making some significant adjustments to their plans. 30,000. Oh my, that's quite a substantial amount to arrange on short notice. Yes, it is. I feel terrible for them, of course, but I'm sure they'll figure something out. They're very resourceful people. After I hung up with Bella, I sat back in my chair and smiled. By tomorrow morning, Marcus and Sarah would wake up to the full reality of what I'd done. Every vendor would be calling them, asking about payments and explaining cancellation policies. Bella would be sending them revised estimates based on having zero budget. Their perfect fairy tale wedding would officially become their worst nightmare, and I would sleep better than I had in months. The call from my mother came at 6:47 a.m. on Friday morning, exactly 18 hours after my final conversation with Marcus. I'd been expecting it, but I still let it ring 4 times before answering. Jessica Marie Coleman. Mom's voice was ice-cold with fury. What have you done? Good morning to you too, Mom. I've had my coffee already, thanks for asking. Don't you dare get smart with me. Marcus called us last night, crying like a child. He says you sabotaged his entire wedding. I settled back against my pillows, surprisingly calm for someone about to have the fight of their life with their mother. I didn't sabotage anything. I simply withdrew my financial support for an event I wasn't invited to. You were invited. Of course you were invited. Really? Funny, because when I asked where I'd be sitting, Marcus told me I didn't make the cut for their small, intimate wedding of 120 people. Silence. Then, that's not what he meant. That's exactly what he meant, Mom. He told me I was too stressful to have around on his special day. His exact words. You're being dramatic. You know Marcus doesn't express himself well when he's stressed. The same excuse. Always the same excuse for Marcus's behavior. He expressed himself perfectly clearly. He took my $42,000 and then told me I wasn't welcome at the wedding it was paying for. 42. Jessica, honey, you didn't actually spend that much money, did you? For the first time in the conversation, Mom's voice had shifted from anger to something approaching concern. Not concern for me, of course. Concern about the money. Every penny. Venue, catering, flowers, photography, band, everything. And now it's gone. But surely some of it can be recovered? Deposits, cancellation fees, maybe 10%. The rest is just gone. I heard her sharp intake of breath. Jessica, that's more money than your father and I make in a year. I'm aware. How could you just throw it away like that? There it was. Not, how could Marcus treat you so badly? Not, we raised him better than this, but how could you throw away the money? Because in my family, my feelings were always secondary to keeping the peace and protecting Marcus from consequences. I didn't throw it away, Mom. I spent it on a very expensive lesson about family loyalty. This is insane. You've lost your mind over a simple misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. I snapped, my calm finally cracking. Marcus looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't good enough to be at his wedding. Sarah told me they hired a wedding planner because everything was covered. They excluded me from every planning activity, every decision, every moment that mattered, while taking my money the entire time. But family is more important than… Exactly, I interrupted. Family is more important. So why didn't Marcus remember that before he kicked me out of his wedding? Another silence. When Mom spoke again, her voice was smaller, less certain. He says you won't even consider putting everything back, that you hung up on him. And what exactly should I put back, Mom? The trust? The respect? The relationship? Because those are just as gone as the money. The vendors, Jessica, your brother's wedding, is not my responsibility. Marcus is 30 years old. If he wants a wedding, he can figure out how to pay for one himself like every other adult on the planet. I heard Dad's voice in the background, then Mom covering the phone to have a muffled conversation with him. Your father wants to know, Mom said finally, if there's anything they can do to help fix this. They could start by acknowledging that what Marcus did was wrong. That taking someone's money and then excluding them from the event it's funding is cruel and selfish. Of course it was wrong. Then why is the first call I'm getting from you about how to fix his problems instead of asking if I'm okay? The question hung in the air like a challenge. For 30 years, every family crisis had followed the same pattern. Marcus would screw up. I would either fix it or get blamed for not fixing it, and everyone would move on without ever addressing the underlying issue. "Jessica," Mom said softly, "you're our daughter. Of course we care if you're okay." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you care about Marcus's wedding going smoothly and me not making waves. Same as always." "That's not... We love you both equally." "No, you don't. You love Marcus unconditionally and you love me as long as I'm useful. There's a difference." Before she could respond, I heard my call waiting beep. The caller ID showed Marcus's number. "Mom, I have to go." Marcus is calling, probably to make another desperate plea for me to fix his mess. "Will you at least listen to him? I've been listening to him my whole life. Maybe it's time he learned to listen to me." I switched to Marcus's call. His voice was hoarse, like he'd been crying or yelling. Probably both. "Jess, please. I'll do anything. I'll grovel. I'll get on my knees in front of the whole family. Whatever you want. Just help me save this wedding." "Marcus." Sarah's been crying for 2 days straight. Her parents are flying in from Oregon. My college friends already booked hotels. The whole thing is going to be a disaster, and it's all my fault. For a moment, hearing the genuine anguish in his voice, I felt something crack in my chest. This was my little brother, the kid I'd read bedtime stories to when our parents were fighting. The teenager I'd helped with homework when he was struggling in school. Despite everything, I loved him. But love without respect was just enabling. And I was done enabling. "You're right," I said quietly. "It is all your fault." I know it is. I was selfish and stupid and cruel, and I don't deserve your help. But Sarah, she doesn't deserve this. She's never done anything to you." Sarah looked me in the eye and told me I didn't fit the vibe of your wedding. Sarah hired a wedding planner with my money and didn't tell me. Sarah sent me a text saying everything was covered when I offered to help. She's just as responsible as you are. "Please, Jess, I'm begging you. I'll pay you back every penny." "With what money? You're still paying off your car loan and living paycheck to paycheck." "I'll get a second job. I'll sell my car. I'll do whatever it takes." You should have thought about that before you decided $42,000 of someone else's money meant you didn't have to treat them with basic respect. The silence stretched between us, broken only by his ragged breathing. "So that's it?" he asked finally. "You're really going to let my wedding be ruined over this?" "I'm not ruining anything, Marcus. You ruined it when you chose to exclude the person funding it. I'm just declining to fix your mistake this time." "This time? Like you've been keeping score my whole life." Maybe I had been. Maybe that was the problem. I'd been so busy keeping score that I'd never just walked away from the game. "I love you, Marcus," I said, and meant it. "But I don't like who you are when you think someone owes you something. And I'm done being that someone." I hung up before he could respond. That evening, I got a text from Sarah. "The wedding is postponed indefinitely. I hope you're happy." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "I'm not happy that your wedding was postponed. I'm sad that it took losing it for you to realize how badly you treated me." She never responded. 3 months later, I heard through family gossip that Marcus and Sarah had a small ceremony at the courthouse with just their parents present. They couldn't afford anything else. Part of me felt guilty about that. But a larger part of me felt free. I used the money I would have spent on their makeup wedding, because there definitely would have been a makeup wedding if I'd caved, to book a solo trip to Italy. I spent 2 weeks wandering through Tuscany, eating incredible food, drinking amazing wine, and not once having to worry about anyone else's problems or feelings or financial emergencies. For the first time in my adult life, I was putting myself first. It felt pretty good. Marcus and I eventually spoke again, about 6 months later. He apologized. Really apologized. Not just the surface-level sorry he'd offered when he was desperate. We're working on rebuilding our relationship, slowly, with boundaries I should have established years ago. But I never did pay for another one of his mistakes. And I never will again. Some people might think what I did was cruel or vindictive. They might say families should forgive and forget, that love means always giving people second chances. Maybe they're right. But love also means expecting better from the people you care about. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the consequences of their choices, even when those consequences are devastating. Especially then. My brother learned that actions have costs and that using people has consequences. Sarah learned that there's a difference between taking someone's money and earning their respect. And I learned that standing up for myself, even when it hurts the people I love, isn't cruelty, it's self-respect. And after 30 years of putting everyone else first, I finally understood what that felt like. It was worth every penny.